about 50% full. So it was a good.
I was thinking of actually asking for the doors to be closed, except it might get a bit warm. The reason is sometimes the traffic noise overtakes. So what we'll do is we'll leave them open, and if the traffic noise is a problem, somebody at the back could perhaps close them, okay? So a warm welcome to all of you, and a special welcome to the candidates. Sadly, there are apologies from Deputy Hugh Raymond, who is not at all well this evening, so he is unable to join us. He sends his apologies. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves. Following the introduction, I will open the floor to questions. Only questions, please, from those eligible to vote in this district. If you wish to ask a question, you will be given the mic. Please give your name and your parish. The questions should be concise. This is not an opportunity for speeches. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. As with their 3-minute introduction, 15 seconds prior to the end of that, Jane will give them a warning that they're coming to the end, a 15-second warning. The first question, to follow on from this afternoon, because not everybody had a turn of answering them first, will be taken by Deputy Kirsten Morrell, and then we'll move down the line and around in answer. The second question will be answered first by Deputy Guida. Thank you. Could I ask, is it Deputy Guida to start the introduction? Oh.
No, for the introductions it will be...
Right. Elaine, could you please start your introduction?
Hello, my name's Elaine Miller and I'm standing as an independent candidate. I've lived in Trinity for over 20 years and I love its natural beauty and strong sense of community. I've really enjoyed meeting other parishioners over the last few weeks and listening to your concerns. It's good to see so many of you here tonight. Thank you for coming. I'm an advocate and I've been a lawyer for 35 years. I have a track record of success in my career. I was a director at one of our biggest banks and a partner of one of our biggest law firms. For the last 7 years, I was the Viscount and the first woman to be appointed to that office. These roles have helped me develop skills that I believe are essential for a States member. I can make sense of complex information, I'm good at finding solutions to problems, and I know how to make sensible decisions. And that's what I'm proposing to you now, someone who's capable, who can get things done, and who will work hard to deliver positive and effective outcomes for the 3 parishes and the island as a whole. I believe I can make a real and immediate contribution to the States Assembly. My manifesto focuses on 3 areas. First, business. Although we need to protect the financial services industry, the majority of businesses in Jersey employ fewer than 5 people. Small businesses are the lifeblood of every community, and we must do more to support them by minimising unnecessary red tape. There are lots of businesses in Trinity, but we also have enterprises like Acorn and Durrell, which is world famous for its conservation and contributes to our visitor economy. We must help them to thrive. Second, health and social care. Our health professionals should have the resources and facilities they need to provide a good standard of care. The new care model needs clear funding and more people and more input from the health professionals. We must now focus on building a hospital that meets the island's needs. Third, and by no means least, housing. This is a major issue, and many of you have told me of your concerns with housing and the impacts on your families. We need to look for sensible ways to increase our housing stock, and Trinity has some good examples here with Maison Cabot and Ronclos. But we also need a fair deal for landlords and tenants, and we need help to buy schemes that work for Jersey. But we must understand our current and future needs for housing, and to do that, we need a carefully considered strategy on population. Like many of you, I also want to see effective controls and more transparency in government spending. As Viscount, I was responsible for public funds, and I took that responsibility seriously. But I found that government systems do not result in value for money, and that has to change. We need clear responsibility for public spending, and individuals must be held to account for managing budgets. I do hope you will give me one of your votes. I will not let you down. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Mary Venturini, and I come from St John's. Thank you all for coming here this evening to listen to us. Also thanks to all my supporters and helpers across the 3 parishes of St Lawrence, Trinity and St John. In this district, you have a very clear choice. There are 3 alliance candidates here, one of whom has been the Chief Minister for the last 4 years. You also have 5 independents. Do you want more of the same alliance leadership, or do you want something new? My name is Mary Venturini, and I am one of the new independent candidates. My roots go back to St John's, to the arrival of my grandmother in the 1920s. My mother lived in Roselle for the last 10 years of her life and loved the unique community there. I came back to live in St John's about 20 years ago. Before that, I established and ran the largest English language publishing company in Rome when I lived there with my husband, bringing up a young family. I know about doing business in a very competitive and difficult environment. My recent experience in Jersey has been analysing the new hospital project. This has brought me in contact with almost every other sphere of island life. We do need a new hospital, but I am against the one this alliance government is pushing through at the eye-watering cost of £804.5 million and rising. We could do another design in the same place at Overdale, but so far we have not managed to do it. I'd like to just mention the other crises there are, all which have come about during the 4-year term of this last government. The whole healthcare crisis. This is not only to do with the hospital, but is also to do with the conditions that the nurses and doctors have to cope with. The employment crisis. All sectors, healthcare, hospitality, building, finance, farming, are finding it difficult to get staff right now. One of the reasons for this is the housing crisis. Young people are finding it impossible to find decent rental accommodation or to even think about buying a house. We have to re-examine the whole housing chain, from substandard rental properties to the huge multi-million houses left empty for long periods. The agricultural crisis. We can't be in Trinity without mentioning agriculture. Plenty of efforts are being made in regenerative farming and different ways of farming. Many of the big Jersey farmers are now accredited members of the organisation LEAF. I will tell you about LEAF in due course if anyone wants to ask me. The climate crisis. We know there is a climate emergency, but we are doing too little to face it. It is one of the forgotten subjects at the moment.
Hello everyone, and thank you to the Constable and parishioners of Trinity for allowing us to hold our hustings here this evening. My name is Andy Howell, and I'm standing as an independent candidate for Deputy for the new District 3, and I would really appreciate your vote on the 22nd of June. I feel very fortunate to have lived in Jersey for the last 40 years. I know that doesn't mean I qualify as a local, but nevertheless I regard Jersey as my home. We've brought up our family here. I really care about Jersey and all aspects of island life. People, environment, traditions. I'm standing for election because I think we need a fresh start. We need new states members, and I would love to be one of them. I want to be part of a states assembly that listens to islanders and is open, transparent, and accountable. I will work collaboratively and with integrity to make sensible and financially sound decisions. ensuring that we do not waste taxpayers' money and that we live within our means. I do not think that the island should be in debt. I want to address the cost of housing. As a retired dentist and wife of a GP, I am passionate about making positive change within our healthcare system, reducing bureaucracy. Our future hospital needs to be properly future-proofed and provide all the services and facilities that we need. Current plans need to be revisited. Sadly, morale is low at the moment, and I want this to change. Our wonderful frontline staff need to be cherished and empowered to do their jobs. Excellent patient care, coupled with kindness and compassion, has to be the number one priority. As the electorate, you have to decide. Do you wish to continue with the present government? Do you think things have been well managed over the last 4 years? Or do you want change? I think we need positive change and a different way forward for Jersey. I believe everyone matters. I'm approachable, hardworking, and will value your input. I think that together we can put islanders at the heart of decision-making. But the only way I can make a difference is if I get elected on June the 22nd. So if you live in St John, St Lawrence, or Trinity, please vote for me, Andy Howell. I would love to be your deputy. Thank you so much.
Good evening, I'm Hilary Jearn, and I would love the opportunity to work for you to make Jersey a fairer, more inclusive and sustainable place to live. If elected, I will use my passion, experience and influence to make a real difference. Making a difference is what drives me, and it's why I'm standing as an independent candidate. I grew up in Zion and became interested in politics through my family, who taught me about the importance of giving back to our community, of making an impact and difference for good, for getting things done with strong work ethics, and how to participate in a good debate that is respectful of everyone's opinion, especially the importance of listening. This inspired me to follow the path that I have been on for the last 20 years, working with and influencing international organisations and their member governments, including the United Nations, the World Bank and the European Union. I've worked for Oxfam and the Fair Trade Network, and now through my own business, encourage countries to reduce inequality, protect the environment and create a sustainable future. I've monitored, scrutinised and influenced the European Union's budget, how the World Bank spends its funds, as well as influence trade, climate change, agriculture and international development policies. Given my time locally, I'm Deputy Chair of Jersey's Young Adults Homeless Charity, JAF, and advisor to the Jersey Community Foundation, elected member of St John's Committee Rural, who's working to influence the bridging plan, and editor of St John's Parish magazine. Using this experience and knowledge while working collaboratively and building consensus, I believe I can make an impact. Policies must be value-led, evidence-based and focused on our future for our younger generation. We must address and improve the situation for housing in both the private and rental markets to stem the cost of living crisis. I want to see a strong, diverse economy that works for all, which supports small businesses, innovation and pushes us to be a sustainable finance jurisdiction. As a mum of two, I know firsthand how vital it is that we devise and implement an education framework that focuses on problem solving, critical thinking, building confidence and empathy, and reducing excessive testing. Protecting our environment is high on my agenda. We must do more to protect our island and play a role in achieving global goals. This includes accessing affordable, healthy food from farmers that are valued. I will prioritise delivering accessible primary health care and a new hospital. And I will work for a diverse and inclusive society that addresses the gender pay gap, supports parents' return to work, and the further adoption of the living wage. I want to support and preserve parish life as it enhances our community. Though I'm unhappy with this new arrangement, I will strive to ensure the constituency's 4 deputies and 3 constables work together to establish a space for constructive, collaborative exchanges of ideas. I promise to listen to you and to be your voice. I'm accessible, approachable, constructive, and I will collaborate with all state members to develop impactful policies and get things done. Please consider voting for me to deliver a fresh approach to politics. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm John Lafondre, and it was 16 and a half years ago that I was first elected, and it's been a privilege to serve as Deputy of St Lawrence, Senator, and most recently as Chief Minister. The last few years have been unprecedented, with Brexit, COVID, and now the impact of Ukraine, and it's taken calm, tough decision-making, resilience, experience, and total commitment to lead the government through this time. And while some people sadly suffered loss and others still face difficulties, Jersey has emerged in a strong position. This afternoon, I referred to working with like-minded people, actually meant to say people who are like-minded in approach, who will work as a team, bringing different opinions to come to a solution. And that's generally actually what we had on this Council of Ministers. It isn't easy, it takes leadership, and it takes listening. People have claimed we've been a disaster. Well, we protected lives, protected businesses and livelihoods, kept the schools open longer than almost anywhere else. We had a fantastic vaccination programme and a hugely successful Spend Local scheme which attracted international attention. We have come out of the worst global pandemic that certainly we have ever seen in my lifetime in a sound financial condition with a surplus last year of £59 million and higher reserves. If all of this is a disaster, then I wear that label with pride. I have no time for nasty, petty politics. I try to be positive and constructive to secure a positive future for Jersey. I have been encouraged and humbled by the wide range of people who have thanked me personally for our work throughout COVID. I'm seeking re-election to continue to drive forward work already started in other areas. We have saved over £200 million that is now being used to improve areas that have not been supported for years. There have been too many short-term, knee-jerk decisions in the past. We've implemented many long-term decisions, which will allow, over time, see sustainable improvements in health, education, sport, culture, and the arts. We've increased investment into mental health by £10 million a year. There has been improvement, but we need to focus even more on areas to support delivery and on outcomes. Plans in progress will deliver thousands of homes over the next few years. There is hope, but it requires continued focus and persistence. Work started on Fort Regent, and the new tech fund will help grow the digital economy. We live in an increasingly complex and rapidly changing world. It will take experienced politicians as well as new faces to grapple with these challenges, present Jersey on a global scale, and to hit the ground running. I hope you will recognise the value of my experience and consider me for one of your 4 votes. Thank you for listening.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for coming out this evening to listen to us all. I've been a States member for 4 years. It's been the most amazing 4 years. I've learnt incredible amounts, I've met wonderful people, and most of all, I've spent my time listening to people, trying to understand what they want from Jersey going forward. Jersey's an interesting place. For 70 years, since the 50s, we've had pretty much ongoing success in a material sense. But I think now we stand at a crossroads. It's one that we see before us, where we understand that young people are looking at the island and saying, I don't know if I have a future here. I'm being priced out of this island. For me, I look at that and that makes me hurt. Because Jersey needs a future. We need young people to want to stay here. We need to help them, and we need families to be helped to deal with the cost of living. We need to create plans, whether it's shared equity, whether there are other access to housing policies that can help, which enable people to get on the housing ladder. We need people to be able to afford rent, not have rent that makes it impossible to run a family life. I spoke to someone just this afternoon, and he was telling me he spends 50% of his wages on rent. What can he do? He's got 2 children. One's 14, the other's 8. His wife can't work due to ill health. But the income support system is so complex, so bureaucratic, that he's decided it's easier for him. The stress is less for him to actually spend 50% of his wages on rent rather than going to income support, having the stress, and getting an extra £85 a week, which is really important to him, but he can't. What I bring for you is someone who is trying his hardest and really wants to work for you all, bringing common sense, a practical approach, and a deep understanding of the complexities that all the issues that we will hear about tonight have. For 4 years, I hope that I've shown that I speak out on behalf of islanders. I've questioned the government when I was a member of scrutiny, and I accept nothing except straight answers. As an assistant minister, I've worked in the rural economy. I've doubled the amount of funding to farmers. I've helped farmers, I've helped smallholders. I have a vision for farming which I think can take us a long way into the future and help us a little with our own food security here. In culture, arts and heritage, I've made a massive difference in the sense, that sounds too much, I've helped others make a massive difference, I apologise for that, by enabling them to reach new audiences. We've seen galleries open in town. We've seen exhibitions about migrants to Jersey. These are populations that haven't been engaged by the arts before in Jersey. And that's something that I asked the Art House Jersey and others that we fund to do. So I'm here, I'm asking you to hopefully vote for me. And I do so not as someone who can answer every question. No party or one person can. But I will work hard with whoever else is elected to do that for you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. 4 years ago, I promised that if I was elected, I would work hard for the island. During this term, I participated in 2 ministries and 20 different boards, committees, and panels. And I'm extremely proud of having been able to work for the island. This was hard work. This was very hard work, lots of tough decisions. And while the power of ministers is quite a bit overrated, I hope that I've made a small but positive difference to the people of Jersey. I also spent the last year defending Jersey against the country of my birth. I may not get a French passport ever again, but I've made my choice. This government initiated dozens of generational projects. All these projects that had been left over because they would not come to fruition during your term, because they take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We started them all. We did everything. We started the sports and community facilities overhaul, which was desperately needed. We reviewed the state's pensions. I'm only talking about the financing, not the pensions themselves. We finally started the new government offices. It's incredible that with all the real estate that the state of Jersey possess, they still rent most of their offices. It's ridiculous. This has started, and this will free many brownfield sites for development, housing. The Saint-Hélier regeneration, we've tried for years to look at Saint-Hélier, at the whole place, have a holistic view of Saint-Hélier. This time, we did it properly. This time, we are redeveloping Saint-Hélier in the right way. And of course, we've just started the redevelopment of Fort Regent, which was also desperately overdue. We did this while dealing with the 2 worst crises of the post-war generation. We all remember COVID, but many of us have already forgotten Brexit. And you have no idea how much work Brexit was for the states, for the government. We rewrote half of our laws. We had to rewrite half of our laws from scratch. It was massive. It still hurts many people. It is still very difficult to deal with, but it's a fraction of what it could have been if all the people in the government hadn't worked like mad to get this over the line. And at the same time as we had these extraordinary things, we took on some very big projects.
15.
The island plan, the climate emergency, the new government offices, OneGov, and our hospital. We also launched the largest housing building campaign in Jersey's history. I believe we did well considering circumstances, but so much more remains to be done.
Thank you. We have a roving mic, I think, with the help of one of the honorees. Thank you very much indeed. I'll open the floor for questions, please. Gentleman far right at the back. Yeah, I will do it. Let me just do this question.
My name is Frederick, and I'm a ratepayer and voter in Trinity. I have a question to the candidates, and the title is 010, The Unplanned Consequences. The reasons for bringing in 010 are understood and need not be explained. The reasons for growing and stimulating the economy are understood and need not be explained. 010 has also caused the sale of many Jersey companies and businesses to owners in the UK. This means that those companies and businesses make profits in the island which are taken to the UK. Those profits do not benefit Jersey. On the contrary, the Jersey taxpayer has enabled those profits to be made.
Could we have the question, please?
We're coming to that.
No, but we're on a time scale. Could we have the
Hundreds of
question?
millions of pounds are lost in Jersey, or by Jersey, in lost income tax. Examples of those companies are Granite Products, Roberts Garages, Jersey Royal Company, Alfred Bartlett, Norman. The questions arise.
This is a speech. Will you ask the question,
The
please?
question is, growing the economy at what cost? And also, which economy? The UK economy or Jersey's economy? Does the candidate accept this state of affairs? And what is the candidate going to do about it?
I will do as soon as the question has been answered. Sorry, Kirsten.
Thank you. We're starting with just before you type. We're starting with me just because that's how far we got.
Could I just... There are some seats at the front, if you would like to use them. No?
We don't buy.
There are. Don't be embarrassed. Okay, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, that's okay. Thank you, sir. It's a very pertinent question. There's no doubt about it. 010, in my mind, it enables the finance industry, and that's really important. The finance, no industry brings in money to Jersey like the finance industry does, so it needs to be protected. The other thing 010 does is that it enables enterprise. If you're starting a small business, as I have done and my wife has done, not being taxed the day you start is really important. It helps in enterprise and small business in Jersey. But you put your finger on one of the issues. There are companies which are not Jersey companies, which essentially take profits straight out of Jersey to the UK. And they might get taxed in the UK, but we don't see that benefit over here. Now, we did bring in a retail tax on big retailers, and that helped bring in money from them. We do tax utilities, we do tax financial services 10%. But one thing has to change about tax. If we want a stable population, we need to change our tax system away from personal income tax. And as a result of that, I think we're going to have to revisit 010, because there's no other way to gain a stable population without changing our tax system, because at the moment it demands more people coming to the island. Thank you.
Well, unfortunately, I completely agree with the gentleman. This is a real problem. However, you do have to remember that we didn't choose to have 010. It was basically imposed upon us. It was the only way we could make this work. So, unfortunately, we have to keep it for the time being. But the same people who imposed it upon us are now looking at another system where they would have a minimum rate of company tax across the world. So unfortunately, that really doesn't depend on us. We have to wait for them to finish that research for all the countries to agree, and then there will be a minimum tax system for all companies across the world. And that's what we will implement.
Well, I also agree up to point. I always found when 010 was introduced, I found it very peculiar that it seemed to me that local businesses would be paying tax and foreign-owned businesses would not be paying tax, and that does seem to me to be inherently unfair. We do tax a lot of those businesses, and as Gregory and Kirsten have said, we brought in 010 to protect our finance industry. I think at the time, the Isle of Man were doing something very similar, and we brought in those measures to ensure that our finance industry could continue to compete on a level playing field with other jurisdictions worldwide. It is important to the island, and we can't ignore its value to us. There are more international tax changes coming. We have got changes coming through OECD, Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. We will have to reflect those in our tax laws, but I don't think they will make a huge difference to the island's taxes because they affect the super rich global companies that are really earning billions and billions, and I don't think that will affect our tax rate. Thank you.
010 has always annoyed me for the simple reason that if you have enough money to form a company, you should be able to pay tax. I know there are good reasons for financial reasons, international reasons for not having it, but I think it's inherently unfair on the individual taxpayers, and that is particularly people who are resident in Jersey. I don't see why we should continue with it, and I would like to abolish 010 as quickly as possible and review the whole tax system.
I think that a 010 was brought in at the time for a good reason, but I think it has put a lot of burden on Middle Jersey, and it continues to put a lot of burden on Middle Jersey. It doesn't seem very fair that local businesses are taxed in the way they are, whereas companies not in Jersey aren't taxed in the same way. And I think it is something that we need to look at in the future, sooner rather than later, because I don't think it's fair that Jersey people are being having to pay a larger burden of the tax in the island at the moment. Thank you.
I know that 010 was imposed by the EU because I've attended some of those meetings at the European Parliament when Jersey was asked was scrutinised by those members of the European Parliament to explain why we were carrying on the way we were, and it showed that there was definitely an imbalance that was happening in Jersey. That came through in some of the answers that were given at the time. But it does help small businesses. It has helped me set up my own business. But I really do think it does need a review. The corporation taxation does need a strong review. And this should be as part of that, what we've talked about, which is BEPS and the OECD putting this minimum tax rate at the global level coming in. We will be receiving more revenue, and that will help us to look at long-term tax planning in a different way and help us to have a fairer tax system in Jersey.
Sorry, you've got to remember actually the finance industry is of huge benefit to the island. It basically pays for many of our services. For the sake of argument, it paid for the new Lekenove school. You've got to recognise that. We've therefore got to continue to support it, in my absolute view. We have to remember that the reason behind 010 was essentially it came out of the European Union, and essentially any changes to our tax structures in that ambit has to be renegotiated, done with the agreement of the European Union. I can't comment on the companies the gentleman mentioned, other than to say I think quarrying is actually already captured by taxation. Pillar 1 and Pillar 2 are representing changes from the OECD, and they will generate some small measures of taxation. You shouldn't mess around with the tax structures that we've got as we are coming out of COVID, Ukraine, cost of living, you name it. You actually want to let business recover as a whole. There are measures in place to diversify the economy. We're making sure that those will be subject to taxation. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question, please. Lady in the front.
My name is Samantha Blair and I live in Trinity, and I'd like to ask members of the panel, if elected, what they would do to ensure that non-local investors are stopped from buying up flats on the island.
Well, you'll be very happy to hear that this was done, basically. So there were two things. First of all, of course, if you're going to live in it, you need qualifications, and foreign investors are not about to get them. The only loophole we had was share transfer, and that was closed. So that is it. If you cannot just buy from abroad and invest in the island. And that, of course, is stopping a lot of speculation.
I think I have a friend who's a lawyer in one of the biggest property practices in the island, and what she's told me is that there's very little evidence of foreign investors buying up Jersey land. That this has gained a lot of currency, but most of the people who are buying Jersey property are actually Jersey residents, and I think that is the experience of most of the property practices. I think we need to do something to make it a much more level playing field for people buying to live in properties. A lady told me a story very recently that her daughter queued overnight for one of the new developments in town. The person in front of her had said he was buying 2 flats as investment, and when he got to the front of the queue, he bought 3. And when the lady got to the front of the queue, there was nothing left that was suitable for her. She had a mortgage, she had a deposit, but there was nothing left because someone had bought 3 flats as investment. So we need to try to prioritise people who are buying to live, buying property in Jersey, rather than it entirely being an investment purchase.
We should certainly encourage people who live in Jersey to be able to buy these properties. It's a very difficult situation because it involves the finance industry, amongst other things. I think there should be a registry of who the foreign owners are of these apartments. We should know exactly, and this is not difficult. I then think that they should pay much higher rates than we do. And I think this might be a way of stopping large investors coming in and buying up numerous apartments. The finance companies, the development companies like selling off block to these people because they can get rid of 3 or 4 apartments at the same time. We need to stop this in some way, and we have to get some control of it.
Yes, I think we need to enable local people to be able to buy flats and apartments and homes in the first instance. And I think it shouldn't be too difficult to be able to work out if they are resident in Jersey. That I think we need to probably have a closer keep a closer eye on who's here and who's wanting to buy the properties. And I don't think you should be, if there's a new development, that someone should be able to come along and buy many flats at the same time. I think we need to prioritise people who need them for homes in the first instance. Thank you.
Absolutely, we need to prioritise buying for homes. That is absolutely should be number one priority when we get the new government, because we're really hearing that young people especially are not able to not only get onto the property ladder, but also not able to even afford to rent. I know the Citizens and Advice Bureau are saying that people spend up to 60% of their income on rent. So there needs to be also schemes to help people to not only have first priority, but also to be able to get deposits, support for a deposit, to even go into a rented flat, for support for deposits to get a mortgage, for example, and buy a property as well. So there needs to be looking completely at new schemes as well, and broadening the criteria to have more people able to access that. I think there also should be a landlord's registration scheme, so we really can see who actually owns these properties, so we can see what's there out there.
Yes, as we've said, we have actually started quite a lot of work on this. So external buy-to-let, we actually told SOJDT to stop doing that in 2019. There was actually a state's debate in 2020, which we accepted, mainly because we'd already done it. New share transfer, I stopped that, the ability to start to do that sometime in the last year. I think it was in January, honestly can't remember. Existing transfer is actually more complicated. It needs legislative change. That is in hand. The Jersey Homes Promise, which was launched at the beginning of May, which includes a kite mark being done in conjunction with developers, does give priority to first-time buyers. So there's a lot of measures in play. They've got to take effect. Please remember we lost 2.25 years from COVID. So that's why we are behind in certain areas. But actually, I absolutely agree. Our systems do not talk to each other. We don't have the information, which is why, in the last few months, again, we've set the work going on a property register, not a landlord register, which will give us the information for far better control in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. It's one of the questions that many people are asking, but the truth is, as we've heard, it's not really possible to buy if you're not in the island, so it's not really possible anymore to buy property if you're not from Jersey. The trouble is, and you'll find this in my manifesto, as I've said, homes are for islanders to live in, they're not for speculators. And the problem with the property market over the past 2 years, especially post-COVID, is that people have gained savings, or a number of people have gained savings, and they've been investing that in property. It's a totally rational thing to do, but it's not helping islanders and families who want to live in those homes. So I'm suggesting we need to put increased stamp duty on people who are buying a second or third or fourth or fifth home. If you're buying for investment, you have to pay a much higher level of stamp duty. That is entirely designed to cool off the property market so that families, islanders, can get into the property market at lower levels and buy properties that they can afford. So I think that's a really practical thing that we can do. But thankfully, foreign investors aren't the problem anymore. Thank you.
Next question. Gentleman at the back in the red jumper.
Good evening, candidates. Desmond Hino, Trinity resident, ratepayer. I'd like to cast back a few weeks. On the government website, there was 2 jobs advertised. I was astounded to think that the pharmacist could earn £54,000 a year, which I have not got a problem with. But then I saw an advert for a cycling officer at £69,000 a year. I believe he's got a tandem bike, so that means it'll be over 100,000. Thank you.
Sorry, what is your question?
The question is, what are we going to do about it?
Elaine.
An easy one to start with then for me. I did see the headlines about that, and I do think it does seem astonishing that someone would get £70,000 almost to promote cycling. I don't know enough about the role. I think there was something about this person needing engineering qualifications. Whether he is actually going to go and design cyclepaths, or he or she is going to design cyclepaths. I do think we need to contribute to the greening of our environment. I think there's a strong demand for the increase of cycling, for more cycleways, for more sustainable transport. Do we need someone at £70,000 to do that? I simply don't know the answer. But I do support more sustainable transport, less car journeys. I think Jersey should be looking to do what we can. We're a small island. Lots of people in Trinity have talked about better public transport to reduce our use of the cars, and I think we should be spending money on trying to promote more cycling, find better public transport.
It isn't just in cycling that this is happening. We have the Jersey care model to look at as well. That is very top-heavy with managers who are being paid large salaries to organise the Jersey care model. They are organising in such a way that we still don't even know what they're trying to organise. And every time we ask them questions, we're told that we're not allowed to ask questions. Now, if you were putting together a business model, you would not do it in the same way that the Jersey care model is being done. Now, all I am saying here is that we are top-heavy with managers being paid large salaries. This should stop, and I think the government, the present government, should save money on this and get down to the nitty-gritty and stop messing about.
I think we really have to work out what to prioritise, what we are spending, what the government is spending money on. I'm very keen on cycling, but I think in my day there was one cycling officer and then everybody else was a volunteer, and we had volunteers helping people to cycle. When someone's paid 70,000, it seems a bit unfair that a sister or a staff nurse at the hospital, I think, only gets 50,000. It just doesn't seem quite right. The balance is not there. And it also goes to, I want to say that I think jobs should be advertised for people who are here on the island in the first instance. It seems to me that over the last 4 years, people have been coming in all from England the whole time. And I think we should just, if we use local talent first and then advertise if there's no one here. Thank you.
I acknowledge your concern about the wage that was advertised, and I think this really looks throughout the whole of the civil servant and civil service that you have excessive wages at the top, and this then is reflected going down. And I think it is too top heavy, and we need to reflect again on that, the wage criteria within the civil servants. But one way of doing that also is to bring in from the local people. So to really get locals into the succession, to know that they have a potential career path through the civil servants, so we don't have to bring people in from the UK. But it also supports sustainable transport. And so I think it's really important that using that kind of funding to be able to improve our transport system through the buses, through cycling networks, through walking to schools, all the different ways that I know that a lot of you have raised concerns, especially in Trinity, around the bus system, needs to be improved, and that money could be used for that.
Yes, when I inquired about it, I was told that the job had actually been misadvertised, which wasn't the particularly most helpful of comments. And in essence, it was around a qualified engineer, not someone from promoting cycling. But perception-wise, not helpful. In the wider context, there is a challenge in the growth of the civil service, there's no question. Some of it is necessary. We have about 2,000 members of the public sector who are going to retire over the next probably 8 years. But in the meantime, our IT systems are so bad, they seriously do not talk to each other. That's why we put a lot of money into them. When that works and you get those things coming together, particularly with the challenges of the ageing population, then there will have to be pressure on headcount to bring it down. Also, at this stage, we are still coming out of COVID. The system is not yet stable. So at the end of last year, we had 250 people in contact tracing, who obviously one would hope that will disappear over time, and in fact are disappearing at the moment. I hope that gives some clarity to the position.
I'm really pleased to hear that the job was misadvertised, because I remember reading it myself, Mr. Hino, and I was like, I want to take to Twitter, I want to take to Facebook, what's going on? But then realised you do need to find out the facts, and so to hear it's misadvertised is really important. But I think it does speak to the dislocation between the civil service and the rest of the island. And because we see this in other areas, we see incredibly well-paid jobs, but jobs that you'd think shouldn't attract that level of pay. Now, part of it, maybe because Jersey is an incredibly expensive place to live, and so it's difficult to attract people to come here. But that then speaks to the need to have proper recruitment schemes for young islanders. It strikes me, there are no Director Generals at the top level of the civil service from Jersey. None. So what does that say to young islanders who look at the government and say, well, there's no place for me in my government, because look, all the leaders are from outside the island. So for me, it's a big question for the Appointments Commission. It's a big question for government. How do we bring government into the hands of the people and not the hands of people we keep bringing in? Thank you.
Well, I do know one Director General which is from Jersey. It's the one who works for me, so there is at least one. As for this particular role, I think I'm going to blame reform for it. Because we had the plan within the carbon neutral roadmap to give lots of subsidies to electric cars. That's very easy to calculate, so many thousands per electric car, and it makes them easier to buy. And then one of the reform members said, no, we're going to take 1.2 million out of that, and we're going to put everything into active transport and cycling. And of course, our department saying, well, we have no idea how to do that. First thing they looked at is, we need a project manager. And if you want a high-level project manager, that's probably how you get them. This is how this happened.
Gentleman at the front here.
My name is Richard Day. My children were born here from 1980, and we had to look for a third bedroom in 1990, so we moved to Sir John. We got a passport for Sir John. Okay. I very briefly want to thank all the candidates for standing for their bravery, the courage, and all those that have done their duty so far. Now, my question is, we have lost the ability and power in this election to decide on little more than a fraction of just who we can place our faith in and our futures in. We now have only 3 to 4 deputies to vote and represent us, and confusingly from 3 different parishes to choose from, plus the constable, only 4 plus. Before, we each had 12 island-wide central positions, plus a deputy and a constable. We now have virtually, literally almost no say now in the makeup of our government. Why? The ratio 40 now reduced to 5 at most defines our total diminished ability to secure a satisfactory democratic representation within the states. These elections should be declared totally undemocratic, scrapped, and a fairer democratic system created. Personally, I feel the whole election process has been either rigged or to achieve a certain outcome, or it has been crafted by individuals that should never have considered themselves fit for such purpose. I also feel that the present ministerial government system is clearly failing and should be changed forward.
What is the question, please?
I'm coming to that now. Okay, I've not heard the jackboot since this occupation. I do apologise, but I should be allowed to speak. We need a single assembly where every member I vote for on the 22nd will be able to carry out their promises, both equally and fairly. Otherwise, why should I bother to vote at all? My question is, do you agree to any suggested changes, and importantly, when and how could such democratic revival be realised and achieved? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I think there's something called the Election Observation Mission, which is coming here on Thursday, the 16th of June. I don't know whether it's just us candidates who have been asked to go to that and tell us the ideas, but I hope that it's also members of the public. My solution to this, we've got this system at the moment, and we've got to go through it. But I think that all deputies in future should be elected on an island-wide mandate, and I think the constables should be elected to the states as well. The constables looked after their parishes, and the deputies look after the island. That would be my solution. I think this is an interim measure, but if you're allowed to go to this, I would suggest that you go.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mr. Day. I think Islanders are really dismayed that this new system of super constituencies has been thrust upon them without their agreement, and that their democracy has effectively been halved. So they can only vote now for 5 or 6 representatives as opposed to at least 10 before. So I think we should restore the role of senators, because that's what Islanders want, someone with island-wide representation. I think we should return to parish deputies, and I think we have to go along with this at the moment, and I'll be very happy to represent the 3 parishes this time, but I think everybody really wants their special deputy who they can go to. Thank you so much.
So I wasn't here in Jersey when all the discussions were happening, and I think there was a referendum, and there has been lots of discussions over the years on this. When it first happened, the Clovier report, there was writer there, but then there hasn't been since. And the decisions that were made recently on this, I think there should have been a referendum to actually have this final say, because there was something that was put there, but now you haven't had the final say on this. So it really does, I think, needs to go back to the people to decide how this looks like. how that should be. Should we have island-wide voting? I mean, how will that look like with 96 candidates for you to then be here in the hustings trying to decide for 96 candidates? So I think we need to actually see how this will work. I think it was wrong to put the three parishes together as the parishes because we still have that identity. I think in a way it becomes a really difficult because, you know, you have got the three parishes, but I want to represent all of you in the future. Thank you.
I think I'll make the starting point that myself, Gregory, and I'm 99.5% certain Hugh didn't vote for this at all. Frankly, I consider it a travesty that senators were removed, and I'm still pretty unanimous in that opinion, and that's actually the message we get on the door. I recognise the issues facing St Helier. I don't think this is the way to deal with it. Just to be clear, I also support the constables in the Assembly. Clothier kept the parish identities at the very least. But there should have been a referendum. Certain members stated that they did not want effectively that democratic mandate. They did not consider a referendum necessary for what I consider the biggest change we've seen again since the war, and they persuaded the Assembly not to go for that. On that basis, what we have said is that we would review the situation review the outcome once we see it on the 22nd of June. But for me, I'm fundamentally unhappy, obviously, that the senators are removed. Do not support that at all. Thank you.
The trouble is we did have a referendum, Mr. Day, and the states ignored the result of that referendum. The referendum, the option A, B and C, option B won it, and this is the system that option B brought in, basically. But the states ignored it, and I remember I've never been so angry. I actually went to the states that day, and I told the states members that they did not deserve to be states members because they ignored the referendum. So we have had a referendum on this issue, but it was a while ago. I'm more than happy to bring senators back. I think there is value in island-wide representation, and I think we do need to bring that back. But there are also benefits to this new system. We have 4 superb challengers here. They would not have stood, I am pretty sure, in the single-seat system, because when there were single seats, lots of deputy seats were not contested until the deputy decided to retire. That's not democratic. But here we have the proof in these 4 candidates who are standing here to challenge us, and I think that's brilliant. Also, the all-island system in Guernsey isn't working because no one's picking up the local issues. And so that's a massive problem with the all-island. 112 candidates they had, goodness knows how they voted. So there are pros and cons to every system, but I'll happily bring back the senators.
Well, those who were there will remember that I fought tooth and nail against the new system, which I thought was undemocratic. And of course, I mean, it's extraordinary to hear a deputy, well, a senator actually, in the Assembly say, no, we don't need to talk to the people. You know, they've elected us, now we can do what we want. Mind-boggling. In any case, I even started a petition about this, about not allowing the Assembly to change the electoral system without a referendum. In any case, if I come back, it will be the first thing I do.
Well, I also agree. I would like to see senators coming back. I think the loss of senators has been almost universally unpopular with people I've spoken to. I do understand why we've gone to this system, because I think the last election observation mission that came here in 2018 did comment on the fact that we have people who are elected unopposed, we have some people elected on a few hundred votes, whereas other members have to get several thousand votes to be elected. So our system does look unfair and undemocratic to external observers. But we do need to find a solution that works for Jersey, and the current system is clearly unpopular. I think for the time being, we do have to work with it. I think the 4 deputies that are elected really have to commit to working together as a team for the 3 parishes. I will be there to answer questions from any of the parishes that come up, not just Trinity. And I think we should also be working together and with the constables to do our best for the parishes. But yes, I absolutely support the return of senators by the next election.
Person here, sorry, can't quite see a lady.
Michelle Cabot, Victoria Village, so Trinity. Turning to the young of our island, while there are so many areas your views will be welcomed on tonight, but tonight I would just ask the candidates, are they in the favour of provision of hot, healthy lunches for all our primary school children? And if so, what priority should it have and why?
That's for me. Hello. Thank you for the question. I think hot, healthy lunches are really good and they've been rolled out very well in the schools that really need them at the moment. I'm not sure that every school would need to have that provision. I think we'd have to probably cost it to work out and prioritise. But the concept of everyone having proper food is really important, and I know that it's been really hard for some families, and increasingly people are having to use the food banks and the Salvation Army, so this is a really good measure for families and to make sure that children are well nourished, was healthy. We have to keep our children healthy. That's the first thing we should do for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle, for the question. I absolutely think that's a priority to make sure that we roll out hot healthy food in all primary and secondary schools. I think this could be done on means-tested basis, so not everyone, it's for free for everybody, but it's a fair means-tested, so we can still keep that as low cost as possible for all families. And why that is because, we are hearing that there is a cost of living crisis. People are struggling, that just managing families, we cannot identify, we don't know how many families are out there who are that just managing families because they're not captured in any data system. And I think this is the way that you can help make sure that there is good, nutritious food for all children to help them also learn. I also think it's a good education moment to be able to show that farm to fork process where you can actually really see they can be taught at the same time about the importance of food, nutritious food, making sure they're healthy as well. So I totally agree with that. It's important. Thank you.
The short answer is yes, and it's in the budget. There was a pilot scheme essentially to roll it out, and I can't remember to how many primary schools. I think there have been two difficulties. One has been the delay of a number of projects around COVID, and the second one has actually been the practical side of getting serving areas, if you like, into the relevant schools so you can actually divvy up the meals in an appropriate way, in a clean environment, etc., etc. But it is in the budget, it is being progressed out, and the intention is it will affect, at the very least, all primary schools going forward. Thank you.
So I'm pleased to say it is happening. But at the same time, I also think that some schools need to be prioritised over others. At the end of the day, there are some schools, number one, it's really difficult to fit kitchens in some schools which are listed buildings, etc., and that's really difficult and incredibly expensive. But there are also some schools in Jersey, particularly in the southeastern town, where it's vital we get healthy lunches to those children because they really aren't getting all the food they need every day. In other areas, it's perhaps less vital, and so it is that staged rollout as we go. But I think actually Hillary's comment about the farm to the plate, I think there's also a really good educational piece there as well. But it's happening, so I'm really pleased to be able to say that.
Well, that's going to be an easy one, so we all agree it needs to be done. It's happening. It is in the budget. It's already started. But the biggest difficulty is logistical. It's quite silly. Many schools just don't have kitchens or refectories. So this is building, you need to organize it, and it will take some time. But it is in the budget, and it has started.
Well, it sounds like there's not a great deal to say other than, yes, I also think it's a good idea. I'm of a generation who was given free school milk. I don't know if that still happens, but I certainly support that happening as well. If it doesn't happen now, I think we should reconsider that as well. I agree that we should be looking to prioritise in schools, and I think the fact that we don't have kitchens in schools shouldn't be an obstacle where we can cook in other places and move. We can manage to do Meals on Wheels, we can manage to cook hospital food away from the hospital. We should be able to do the same for schools.
It obviously is a non-issue. It's in the budget and it's going to happen. So I don't really have very much more to say about that, except I think we should think about not just the school buildings, but the teachers who are going to have to administer this. I also wonder, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, whether there could be some link up with Jersey farmers here, that the food that is supplied should be local food and not food that is brought in from elsewhere.
Lady next to Mr. Bright.
Hi everyone, my name's India and I'm from Scoop, and I have to say thank you.
Sorry, your parish?
I own a house for my mum in Trinity, so Trinity. Is that okay?
Sorry, I didn't quite hear you.
Trinity.
Trinity, sorry. Yeah.
That's okay. Bought a house with my mum as a housing crisis response, but we lived in St. One's for many years. But I also am a business owner with another 450 people in St. Lawrence. The question I want to ask, thank you very much for all the effort you put in towards the responses to the food questionnaire that Scoop sent out. But this is specific to collaboration. 4 of you are going to come forward and represent as a community, and this might seem a little bit uncomfortable, but I'd really like to ask if, starting over there, if you can, and what you can say which is really positive about your person next to you, that you believe in, and that the positive things that they are doing for this island, to show how you can work together and work and support a positive future.
What is the question?
If they could say, if the person to say to the going up something positive they think about the next person's manifesto and work that they do.
I'm sorry, I can't allow that question. Sorry, can we have another question? Thank you. Well, maybe. Sorry, I couldn't quite understand, and from what I understood, she was asking a personal issue.
No, about the work and their manifesto, something positive that, because they're going to have to work together collaboratively, something positive that they see in the other person's manifesto and working life that they would like to, collaborate and move forward on.
Okay, I'll allow the question. Yeah, I know. Hilary, it's you to start.
Which way would you like me to go?
Which way are we going?
This way you want to go.
This way.
We'll go left.
I was
thinking well.
Right, okay, so so I know, because I've been, I worked actually as a consultant. I offered my services in the sustainability and foresight team during COVID, because the staff were taken away to deal with COVID. And I know that they worked extremely hard. And I know that John did work extremely hard, because I was seeing that through my work, through my work actually being in the government and trying to fill some gaps of other policy areas that were kind of being left behind during that time. So I know that he worked long hours and was able to, with a team of very, very supportive civil servants who were working around the clock also, to try to make sure that we were safe. Because we were, at the beginning, it was a scary, and we were in the biggest crisis that we have seen in a lifetime. So I think that's what I see in John.
love the question. Generally, look, as states members, actually, you do not achieve anything by working by yourself. You've got a pool of 49 people. You have to get the majority to work with you all the way through. As new members, and we all find this, by the way, it takes a while to learn the ropes, to get your feet under the table, and then to work out the systems effectively. Kirsten actually has had the dubious privilege or pleasure of doing direct work with me at various points, particularly around the statistics side of things, and he has shown energy, passion, and the quality of the work has been very good.
I'm lucky in the sense that I'm talking about someone I have worked with the last 4 years, because Deputy Guida and I both represent St Lawrence, so we have had to work together. There's no question that Deputy Guida is committed. He takes his work incredibly seriously. And having also worked with them not just in St Lawrence, but on the carbon neutral roadmap, I've seen how he can direct a table and ensure that decisions are made, which, when you're talking about the states of Jersey, is a really important quality, to be able to get 8, 9, 10 people around the table to make that decision. And I've seen Gregory do that on more than one occasion. Thank you.
But I'm absolutely delighted that the question was asked. I think it's absolutely brilliant, and it will force me to say something that's very difficult in the situation we are in, which is that there are many very good people at this table. It's going to be difficult. There are many people here that I would be very happy to work with for the next 4 years. And certainly, Mrs. Miller is one of them. I've known her as a Viscount. I've worked with the courts. I know how difficult and how complex the job is, and she's a fantastic professional.
I really only know Mary through these hustings. That's why I've come to meet her very recently. But I would say that she is clearly very passionate about her cause and her belief in the hospital and trying to fight for a hospital that meets our needs. She's intelligent, she's very articulate, and I'm sure that she would fight the fight strongly if she was a States member.
Thank you, Elaine. And I'd just like to say that the first time I met you, we were collecting rubbish together.
Oh, that's true, sorry, yes.
For St John's. Andy and I have worked together for 2 years now on the Friends of Our New Hospital, about the hospital project. Andy knows more about the healthcare system and the hospital than anybody else I know. She digs out information that nobody else has found. She's absolutely invaluable, and I would love working with Andy.
And I'm really lucky because I've known Hilary since she was about 5. And it's been really great because I've seen her, well, grow up. But I'm now really impressed because of all the things that she does and her hard work and her all of the things she can analyse. And it makes me feel very humble. And I think you'll be a really good candidate, Hilary.
It's got to get easier. Young lady.
Thank you. Since the pandemic, my name's Charlie Rowland and I live in Trinity, just down the road actually. Since the pandemic, I think that the mental health of all islanders, but specifically young people, has deteriorated massively. And so I'd like to know, if you were to be elected, how you would help to improve the accessibility and also the quality of mental health support in Jersey for young people and also for adults.
Senator Lafondre.
Apologies, I was trying to just get my thoughts in range. When we first started, in fact, in the senatorials in 2018, mental health was actually an issue at that point in time. I highly recognised that we were not doing enough and the systems weren't right. Particularly with COVID, which you're right, we are definitely seeing a serious increase in mental health challenges, even in the last few weeks, but it's been building up. Basically, there is an increase in funding that will achieve, I think it's £10 million a year. That's the increase And I think we're at 9 for this year. I think it then goes up to 10 next year. And that's in the budget for the next 4 years. The rough split is about 4.5, I think it's 4.5 million for children and 5.5 million for adults, give or take. But it gives you the seriousness that we are applying to that situation. The COVID recovery is also about generally about bringing people back in, which is about mental health a little bit. There's some extra funding going to that. And actually separately, I released a report on the issues of digital, that's the use of phones and that and screens and the impact on children, which actually was released a couple of weeks ago.
Thank you, Charlie. It's mental health, as Senator Fondre just said, mental health was a big election issue 4 years ago. And it really worries me that it's not a big election issue this year. And that really concerns me. It's people talk about it, but it's not coming through really, really strongly. Because we've had 2 scrutiny reviews which have shown that mental health services are failing in this island. They continue to fail, despite improved investment. I was talking to someone just the other day who was in Orchard House and was given a urine-stained mat to sleep on. It's a duvet to sleep on, mattress, sorry. We are failing constantly with regard to mental health. As far as young people's mental health is concerned, we haven't dealt with the anxiety issues. I know teenagers who are still refusing to go back to school after COVID because their anxiety levels are through the roof. We need young people services which aren't just the talking therapies, they're not just your GP referrals. We need services that people can access in the middle there as well, where you're not just at crisis point or just at the lighter end. That's so much we need to do. It can't be understated.
Another subject that's way too vast for just 1 minute. So yes, we have invested heavily into the services, and this is just a start. We know that it's an ongoing campaign. And I would actually like to talk about another one, which is the COVID recovery fund. And basically, as part of the end of COVID, we looked at putting some money in what was needed after COVID, and one part of it was mental health. And the way we looked at that was through diversion, was sports, arts, culture, how to get people interested in things, and not sinking into a vicious circle. And this is something I understand that can be used after that. So this will be a very good experiment for Jersey, and we'll probably continue it afterwards.
I agree that mental health for young people does seem to be in a sorry state at the moment. I've spoken to 2 people who have told me that they have a teenager, about 14 or 15, who had such a poor experience with CAMS that they refused to go back. I think we need mental health services that respond earlier and not just when someone's in crisis, because it sometimes seems to me that you only get attention when you're really on the edge of a major breakdown. That has to stop. I also spoke to someone, I think yesterday, who said they had a child who had a degree in clinical psychology who tried to get a job in Jersey and was told we didn't need that sort of thing over here. So clearly there's some very, very confused messages. But I think we really need to focus on children's health. We need, and not just medical intervention, but as Gregory said, sports science, coping strategies generally, resilience, helping children and young people and all of us just be stronger and more resilient in our mental health. There's lots of things we can be doing for that, but it has to be a focus.
Thank you very much for asking that question. I think I would like to go even further back than the treatments and the money that is being given out. And I would like to see mental health as a holistic part of physical health. I don't think these two can be divided. It's a problem, I think, that goes back to the beginning of the National Health Service, that you have physical on one side and you have mental on another. This should not happen. It is all one thing. Mental health has a considerable influence on physical health, as physical health does on mental health. And I think we should start as a new vision of what health is about. And this is what we should be thinking of now, just not patching everywhere we go.
Yes, I think it's really, really important, and I think although apparently there's a lot more investment, it doesn't seem to have filtered through yet, and there are still very, very long waits for young people to be able to access the care that they need, and that shouldn't be the case, because when you're worried, or when you've started to get a problem, you need to start sorting that out straight away, and it's no good saying you've got to wait for 10 weeks or 20 weeks or 30 weeks. We have to have more people in the service because it's so important for all our young people. And I'm very worried that they haven't finished Orchard House yet. And I'm even more worried that we're building a new mental health unit with less beds than we've got now and no proper place for our teenagers and young people in this complex. And we have to look at those plans again, because that's not right. Because, you know, we really, really need to support our young people with all their, you know, and make them well. Thank you.
Charlie, I know that this is a really big issue because I've had first-hand experience with mental health issues within my family. Even my children who are in primary school, I can see it happening in primary school as well. So though there is investment, I really think that it has to be about prevention and really starting as early as possible to make sure that we, you know, don't get to the point where we have to be in that intervention stage. Of course, it's really important to provide those kind of facilities. It's not working at the moment, but we really need to understand what is actually going on. And a big part of that is in the school system, supporting teachers, training teachers to see the signs, supporting them as well in their own mental health issues as well to make sure that they are supported, and really maybe changing the curriculum and the way schools are administered to be able to ensure that we reduce that anxiety and ensure we have as well-being as possible within our children.
Gentleman towards the back there in the red shirt. Reddish. Not colourblind.
I am Ramsey Cudlip, Trinity resident. What is the one specific, tangible thing that you will aim to achieve that will benefit Trinity residents?
Sorry, could you repeat that, please? Sorry.
What is the one specific, tangible thing that you will aim to achieve that will benefit Trinity residents?
Kirsten.
Thank you. It's quite simply better bus routes, safer bus stops. And I say this, I know people laugh, but quite simply, because for 4 years in St Lawrence, I've been trying to get safer bus stops on St Lawrence Main Road. And it's really opened my eyes to how incredibly difficult it is to get the infrastructure department to move on issues which are unblocking issues. Because we say we want to get people out of their cars, we want sustainable transport, yet we have a bus service which doesn't allow that to happen. It doesn't encourage people to leave their cars. And so, having learnt for 4 years, finally making headway in St Lawrence, I now feel much better prepared to do that across St Lawrence, St John and Trinity. And this is where I think, again, having 4 deputies will work better, because 4 deputies and 3 constables are going to be much better equipped to bring these benefits to the parishes than 1 deputy with 1 constable trying to do it alone. So I think we can do that. Better bus, cycle and pedestrian networks. We need them, and we can do that.
This is not going to be very original. I've just been canvassing this afternoon in between the two hustings. And the one question that came back about Trinity in general was bus routes. The fact that you were a little bit isolated in those terms. This is something that is part of the carbon neutrality roadmap. There is money in there to subsidize new bus routes. It will be quite difficult to calculate the ones that are needed because they need to exist before people can use them. You need to take the leap and say, we're going to do that bus route for 6 months at a loss with nobody in the bus until people realize that it's a practical thing. So yes, bus routes, same thing.
Elaine.
It'll come as no surprise. I'm also going to say better buses. That comes up regularly. For the older, and our older people, the current timetables don't work well in terms of if you get one bus in, you don't have time to then get the next bus back, as I've learned from Maggie over there. The other thing that I would say, having walked along Rue Pico one Friday afternoon, there is definitely room for some traffic calming measures. That's a very busy road, very fast traffic, and I know there's certainly demand for the stretch between the church to the other disorientated to the other side of the houses, just to try and reduce the speed of some of that traffic, possibly get in a pavement, because it's a very busy and quite unpleasant piece of road to walk along and to live along.
15. I would also like to see better buses, but I would like a bus that goes across the whole of the north of the island. There are lots of buses that go across the south, and that's fine. There are lots of buses that go from the north down to St Helier, but there's nothing that links the whole of the north of the island. And I think this is essential. There is already a bus that links Bully Bay and Bonwy, so there is already something there. Let's expand it. It's crazy that there isn't one already.
And for me, I have already been down to see Kevin Hart, but we're still a work in progress. But I think there's going to be probably at the next parish meeting, that we might be getting proper pavement from the corner to the Grand Clos. So I reckon that's jolly good. But the most important thing for Trinity residents is I think we should continue with our excellent community spirit, because I think on Saturday afternoon we had the most amazing party in a picnic, and I think that encouraged the whole of the community to get together. And I think Trinity is a great parish. I mean, I also think that St John and St Lawrence are great. But I think I want to carry on the community spirit in each of the three parishes, because we've got great people, and when we get together, we can do it really well. Thank you.
So my children went to Trinity School, and I know that road safety was really important, especially trying to cross the road for children going from Grand Clos down through the lanes to get to the school. There needs to be more. There needs to be green lanes in Trinity, and there needs to be more, I think, traffic calming measures to be able to ensure that you are happy that you're sending your children to school, and they don't need to be walked to school or even driven to school by some parents because of the worry of getting even just across the road. But we've all said, but when I've been knocking on the doors, actually beyond many of the issues that we've talking about resonate throughout St John's and St Lawrence as well. It's the issue of the cost of living, it's the housing. So I know this is important for Trinity, and we've said all the same things with road safety and buses, but I really think it's still tangible, and what will make a real difference for the three parishes in our district is really making sure that we put that housing crisis #1 issue.
It's always difficult coming towards the end as to what you add to it. So obviously buses, absolutely agree. Slightly, I don't know about tangential, or perhaps slightly off the wall. Ever since I've been in, actually I think ever since I first came into this parish hall many, many years ago to present the parish of Trinity's accounts to the Assembly, I've always been impressed by the community spirit that we see. And actually, many years ago, pre-politics, I did a community project for St Lawrence, which is the footpath project down in Waterworks Valley. We had 60 volunteers, had a large period of time. It's about bringing people together, and it's about the community coming together. And for COVID recovery, as part of that kind of mental health re-engagement, I won't say rewilding, but getting back to nature type thing a little bit, but actually getting people out who did not really want to mix with each other, we put some money aside for volunteer projects that potentially for example, will generate footpath projects and things like that. And actually, if you can come together with a volunteer project to that, there is some money ready to fund that if you put the effort into it. And I think that will re-engage people, again, getting that community spirit and that buy-in. It's a bit more than that.
Lady here, please.
Hello, I'm Katie Lacane. I'm a Trinity resident and voter. My question is about education. I noticed reading the different manifestos that several candidates aspire to creating a world-class education service in Jersey. I've chaired the board of governors of 2 non-fee-paying educational establishments, and I know there's quite a step to go if we're going to achieve that. And I noticed that Gregory and John, in their manifesto, said that they would implement the recommendations of the independent review of education funding. One of those recommendations wasn't a firm recommendation, but the island should look at means testing the fee-paying schools so that the wealthier parents pay more and receive less of a taxpayer subsidy for their child's education. And that funding could go into the non-fee-paying sector where it is so badly needed and would even up the chances that our children would have. So I ask each of you, would you support means testing for the fee-paying schools?
Yes, in principle, but of course the devil is in the details, and that is going to be very, very difficult to implement. But yes, in principle.
Elaine.
I have to say, I don't know about the review. I haven't read the review you've mentioned. I think it sounds attractive in principle, but the problem is I think there are many families who already make huge sacrifices to send their children to those schools. And I think with all these types of changes, we have to look at, does it mean that people will feel they cannot then, if they fall outside the net for support, that they then have to withdraw the children? We then end up with a situation where people, do we inadvertently exclude people from those schools? I don't really know the answer to that. I think it needs to be reviewed, but without more information, I can't really comment. I'm sorry.
Kate, I'm sorry, I can't comment on that either. My children were brought up in Italian schools, and what I would like to say there is that the state sector, there is not such a division between the private sector and the state sector. That means that the state sector is excellent, and therefore there is no problem. I would like, in theory, to see that happening in Jersey. It's probably very unlikely, but that would be my vision of a future, that the state schools should be the excellent schools, and the fees-paying schools, well, they'll have other things, but the state sector is the one that really has to be helped.
Kate, I was really lucky because my 3 children eventually went to the colleges, and they were very lucky and had a great education. I think the problem is that the other schools aren't properly financed. They are not properly resourced. I spoke to a lovely headmistress of one of the local schools, and she is in a deficit before she even starts. They're not even given enough money to pay the cleaners the proper amount. So I don't think we should be taking funding away from one lot of schools to put in another. I think we should be giving the money, the proper amount, to all the rest of the schools and supporting all our young people and our teachers, because the budget for education is not adequate at the moment, and that's the only thing we can give our children, give them love and education. So let's invest properly. That's my answer. Thank you.
I'm exactly at this moment now where I'm having to choose for my eldest where to go next for secondary school, and I find, coming from Europe and having a Dutch husband, we discuss this a lot because we find it really hard that there's this kind of division within the education system. So first off, to answer your question, yes, I think there should be means testing. It will be in the detail, of course, absolutely. How do you do that? But the second is we need to ensure that there is actually good funding to all schools, because we really need to make sure that we don't have deficits already at the beginning of the year, that everyone is paid properly, that they are able to support the facilities across the island, because that is important. We should be investing in all our children, and not just those that can afford it.
Yes, that's always an interesting one. I think you said it wasn't what I call a mandatory recommendation for the sake of argument. You've got to be very careful about unintended consequences. So in other words, if you turn it around, does that mean you want to effectively means test or penalise wealthy parents who choose to send their children to states schools? Whereas actually I think the actual big important thing is it's about making sure that state schools have the right resources. That is about the quality of education that everybody receives. That's incredibly important. I would argue that is definitely started. Again, I hate to say this, there is quite significant increases in the relevant budgets. The one I quickly looked up was an extra $4 million a year. But I think there's other components that are going in there. It's about making sure that whilst there's money in there, in the same way as actually has been commented by around out of time on the mental health side, is that the money is then applied appropriately and we get the outcomes we need. Thank you.
I was lucky because my parents saved and saved and saved to send me to Victoria College, and I got an excellent education at Victoria College and I had a wonderful time there. So I want people to go there because I know it was a really good school. It's had its challenges, but it's getting there as well. But we have a divided system in Jersey. It's a really odd system where we tell a whole cohort of people, your parents are either unable to afford for you to go to these private fee-paying schools, or you're not good enough to go to these private fee-paying schools, and you're not good enough to go to Holier either. So we effectively, at the age of 15, 16, tell loads of children, you're not good enough. And that's a really weird system to be in, and it doesn't help. So means testing, I don't think, is the issue. I think the issue is access to schooling, where you don't have to worry about how much money you have, but you're going to the schooling which is most suitable for you as a child, which suits you best. That's the kind of education we need. Education which suits the children, not which suits this bizarre idea of income being the determinator of which school you go
Lady.
Hi, I'm Helen Johnson. I'm a Parish of Trinity resident. Just completely away from what's in place, what's not in place at the moment, and I please don't talk about the hospital because nobody wants to hear about it at the moment, I don't think. But if you were sitting here in our place and looking at what is happening at the moment, what would you feel most let down by or frustrated by, and what do you want to do to change that?
What concerns me, I mentioned it in my speech, and having worked in the public sector for the last 7 years, is I just do see public spending that's out of control, or not out of control, but just not properly controlled and not getting value for money. The public service is one of the biggest purchasers in the island. That means we should be getting the best value. Every time we buy something, we should be getting the best price for it. We should be negotiating discounts, and that is just not happening. My experience is that you pay more. I could buy office supplies more cheaply in Boots than I could do going through government systems. I'm absolutely convinced of that. Government purchasing systems need a kick up the behind. I think we also need to see much more control of... There is a place for consultants, we need experts, but we need to look carefully at how they bill, how they're charging and controlling the spend, because I think there isn't enough scrutiny and review of how much consultants charge. I could tell you lots of stories about examples, but I don't have time.
Right, I guess that means I'm not allowed to talk about the hospital. It's too complex. It is a real worry, and we'll get halfway through it and say, oops, what are we doing? But I will tell you my real worry, apart from the hospital, is the dissatisfaction, the disengagement of voters. There are so many times that I have either knocked on doors or walked down the road and asked if people are voting. They're probably not even registered to vote, for the first thing. And the second thing, if they are registered, they are not going to vote. And why? Because they feel that their vote doesn't make a difference, that they don't count. And I think the little person, little, I put it in inverted commas, really feels left out and let down by the system. And this is one of the reasons why I decided to stand for election, is to get some re-engagement with the political process. I think this is vitally important. Democracy is one of the best things that we have, but if we disengage, we won't have a democracy any longer.
I'm not going to talk about the hospital, but I am going to talk about our care. And I'm worried that at the moment, we do not know where in future we're going to have our physiotherapy, where we're going to have our rehabilitation, because there's not going to be a rehabilitation ward. The Child Development Centre is going to be knocked down, but there's no plan at the moment as to where our children will receive their physiotherapy, their speech therapy. They're going perhaps temporarily to Kennervey, but there's no long-term plan. And what worries me is that things have not been properly thought through. And I think that we as an island need to know with the certainty of where we will receive our diabetic care, care for our pain. We don't know, though it's not been properly thought through, and that's why I'm standing, because I think we need certainty, and as islanders it's a real problem. We have to know how much it's going to cost and where we're going to receive it. Thank you.
I'm really worried about voter apathy. I'm seeing it at the doorstep time and time again, where people are saying they were not going to vote and they choose not to vote because they don't see any change. And I'd like to ask all of you, if you've been to Hustings before, have you heard the same questions that are being asked now that they have been in the last Hustings? Because I think these things are coming up again and again. And I think that's really important to have politicians that really explain honestly how they've made decisions and how they're going forward with those decisions. And democracy is complex. It is about compromise. But then we need to be honest about that as well and about those compromises. And that's where I would like to see changes happening there.
There's an expression I first said in Trinity at Dorrell, actually, which is it's better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. And that's about positivity, it's about trying to achieve change. For me, one of the things that's always irritated me when I've been sitting there is the amount of faff, effectively, that goes on in trying to get decisions done. The one I use actually was the Cyril and Markle's now being demolished. It was all about the Office of State strategy. 10 years ago, no, 12 years ago, that was going to save us £10 million a year, and it was going to release brownfield sites for housing. 12 years later, it's £120 million of my money and my children's money and all your money that has actually effectively been wasted. So number one. Number two, in terms of, so it's now happening and it will be finished in 2024. Housing and population, the ones that I feel we've not moved far enough forward. We've got components in place. As I said, we lost 2.25 years on COVID and actually getting efficiencies out of the system. As I've said, we have actually saved around £200 million a year so far. That is funding a lot of the growth and investment that we're now doing. I hope that explains something.
It's a fantastic question, because it makes me think about something which has really been eating away at me for the last 4 years and probably the previous 40 years before that as well. It's a government that doesn't seem, and by government I mean the full public service, I don't just mean the politicians. It's a government that doesn't seem to understand or be proud of being Jersey. That's what really gets me. That's what I find weird, that I've spoken about being Jersey in the States Assembly at times, and people have looked at me though as though I'm weird. We've lost our sense of identity and of an island, and this, we've heard about the need for community, and it's absolutely vital, and I think that has come from government, not just constantly bringing people in, but it's about not investing in us and our people. We haven't invested in islanders. As a result, we are seeing islanders leaving, and that's a massive problem. So for me, it's people have forgotten, the government has forgotten what it is to be Jersey, and that is what I'm most frustrated and embarrassed about. Thank you.
Well, after a lot of experience in this, I must say that the one thing that frustrated me the most was this reflex of using consultants at the drop of a hat. And I think it's our civil servants do it because we're not empowering them. We're selecting the best possible people. They know their job, they know their business, and then we don't trust them. and then we check on them, and then we scrutinize them, and then we poke what they're doing. So it's so much easier to just send £100,000 to the UK and get a report that nobody will read. And this is something that I would really, really like to change. I would like to re-empower them. They know how to do the things. They should be making those decisions.
Sorry, people finding it hot because we've just opened the door for the last 15 minutes. The alarm might go off. You might empty the building. Is Phil here? Okay, we'll have to do that. Okay. Sorry, we have time for 2 more questions. At the back. Yes, you.
Hello, my name is Liz. I live in Trinity. My question to all of you, if you are elected, is what will you do to tackle the problem of domestic abuse in the island and to promote the rights of women and girls to achieve equality?
Mary.
Sorry, could you just repeat the second part of your question? I couldn't hear that.
What will you do to promote the rights of women and girls to reach equality in Jersey?
I think it's Mary. Mary.
It's me.
Mary.
Domestic abuse, yes, that dreaded subject. I think that within the families, it usually happens most within the families. It's hidden, it isn't exposed enough, and it only is exposed at the very last minute when the danger has happened, when the damage has been done. We are going to have to be much more vigilant on that. I think as far as equality of women is concerned, we've got an extraordinarily long way to go still. It's strange to say, but for the first time in many years, at these hustings, I have felt the division between men and women. I have felt as though I've been going back to an old boys' network. And this has upset me enormously. And I shall do anything to hold up the pay, the power of women. And I think it's very good that there are 4 women standing here as candidates.
Yes, I think we've got to tell young girls from the very beginning that they can do anything that they want to do in life and empower them and make them feel just equal. And I do think that we need equality of pay because I think there is a gender gap still in Jersey, and I think that's something that we probably need to work towards. With domestic abuse, this is a really awful thing that happens. I think we have got a really good police station, police officers who we can contact if there's a problem. But you have to be quite brave, I think, as a woman to go there. And there are also we've got a very good community police officer, and we've got a women's refuge, but that's as a last resort. But it is an issue, and I think it's got was really bad in COVID for some people, and it's an issue that can be swept under the carpet. Thank you.
Inclusivity is a very big part of my campaign. My colours I chose are the suffragette colours for a reason, because I think that's absolutely important that there should be more women represented in the States, and also that issues of inclusivity and diversity and equality are put through the States. I want to see an Equalities Minister for Diversity, Equity and Inclusion to be able to see and reflect on the different proposals that would go through the States to ensure that there is equality within the different propositions. I think we need to reduce gender pay gap and also help parents return to work. Often that is usually women. I've come living in Belgium and the Netherlands. It's a very different society coming to Jersey, and I think there's a lot that can be done and taken examples from other places like in Europe to help us. Domestic abuse needs to start to not even start, so we need to really ensure that we work on prevention before we go further. Thank you.
I'll start with domestic abuse. I think everybody said anything we can say. We have been concerned, particularly during COVID, and more people being much in close quarters, about the potential increase. And that was one of the considerations we had about what you do about working from home and, for want of a better expression, lockdown. In terms of equality, etc., range of issues. We've been trying to change the culture of the organisation within government as one of the programmes we have been doing. For example, equal pay for equal value. You could be working in one part of the organisation doing a particular job, and if you're in a different part of the organisation, you'll be being paid differently even if you're doing the same job. The differential in that was about £60 million when we started. It's about less than £1 million at the moment. I have appointed the first female CEO ever in the organisation, and I've also appointed the first female Deputy Chief Minister initially. Both of those were on merit. And finally, we have an I Will campaign within the organisation about promoting women, particularly getting them onto boards and things like that, to actually grow our own for the future leaders of the organisation. Thank you.
Domestic abuse, I think, starts a lot of the time with the abuser feeling that they are out of control and they want to reassert some control in their lives. And given that, sadly, most domestic abuse is committed by men, I think this again speaks to the mental health question we had earlier. We need services which can reach out to people and help them understand that they do not have to act the way they are. There's this issue of a sense of masculinity which needs to be asserted. And we need, with young people, particularly young boys, to help them understand to respect women and grow up in that way. So I think it's a really deep-rooted issue, and it's one that deals with psychology and has to be dealt with at that level. As far as equality is concerned, I was proud to serve on the vice chair of the Gender Pay Gap Review Panel. I've seen that there is sexism throughout our island in terms of work. The caring professions, nurses, we've seen how important they are, yet they're principally women, and they're paid so much less than male professions such as electricians, plumbers, etc. The whole of society needs to reassess.
Well, in the last 4 years, our two most important tasks in Home Affairs were to come out with the sexual offences law early in the term, and very, very late in the term, but working really hard to get it out, a domestic abuse law. And we're one of the few countries where domestic abuse actually now is an official offence. It's not about assault, it's not about sexual offence. There is an offence of domestic abuse. That's one thing, and it's just started now. The other thing is that we've worked extremely hard on victim support. There is now a victim support charter which details how victims are supported. And for example, one of the things is that you don't need to testify in person. You can testify by video. You don't need to be in the same room as your offender. And the last thing is that Constable Stone made an amendment for the government plan that called for a violence against women and girls task force. And we changed it to bring a call for evidence where we'll ask all women in the island to tell us their stories and try to define how we can help.
If you don't mind, I'm going to focus on the second part of your question about promoting the rights of women and girls. And I sometimes feel like a lone voice, but I'm going to fly the flag again for the public service. And at the risk of blowing my own trumpet, there's been a Viscount in Jersey for 700 years, and I was the first woman to hold that office. I think that shows that the public service is open to women in senior positions. My management team was 6 people, 4 of them were women, and I know that the women managers were paid the same as the men. So there is much more equality. I think the gender pay gap, where women have similar jobs, they are paid the same as men in those jobs. I've been involved in 2 recruitments recently where women, an audit committee for the non-ministerial departments, where the women absolutely shone, We appointed 3 women to that audit committee. I've been involved in others, recruitment for senior positions where women came out 1 and 2. So I think the public service is certainly open. We've also signed up to the United Nations Convention on Elimination. Sorry.
We'll squeeze in one last question.
My name is Pam Evans from Trinity, and I'd just like the candidates' views on the Jersey. I think one candidate's already answered my question unknowingly. I'd like the candidates' views on the Jersey care model, because I'm very concerned about our future care in Jersey.
Andy.
I think the concept of the Jersey care model is very good. The fact that we can have, they're thinking that we can have care in the community, but how it's going to work, I do not know. We do not have the staff, and it's very concerning because we're going to need a lot more staff to manage with people's care if it's all going to be decentralised. I think we probably do need some central care. I think we should have the rehabilitation ward reopened. I'm very pleased it's going to be reopened on July the 1st, but I don't think it should be, it should have been closed, and I think it should stay open because it's been giving a really important service for people who've had really severe strokes and who've come off their motorbikes with head injuries. I really think we have to think very hard about how we're going to fund it, because they've raided the health insurance fund. Anyway, thank you.
The Jersey care model looks great in theory because it is on paper good, because consultants from the UK came in and created this model. But it is at the moment just that on paper because there's not funding to be able to actually implement it. And we've heard that from GPs. We talked to the primary care body, and they were absolutely saying that there is not enough staff to be able to fund the care model. So we would need to be able to recruit a lot more to come into the island. But at the moment we have already staff shortages in what we have now because of the cost of living crisis. So how are we going to be able to make it actually work in the future? We're going to have to reduce the cost of living as well, which we know is a really complex and difficult thing to do. So in theory it would work, but actually in practice it's lots of people are saying that it's not going to be possible. So it has to be looked at again from a practicality point of view.
Yeah, difficult to answer in one minute, I'd say. The concept, absolutely. Even though, obviously, I'm the head of the government and therefore responsible for everything. I'm not as close to the details as I'd like to be. The concept is absolutely fine. The key aim is about reducing emissions within hospital and A&E, and if you actually go through the whole principles around the care model, what they're talking about at the moment is that people are institutionalised, we are underutilising things like theatres, we have very limited service in certain areas about keeping people out of hospital. So that's the present state of play. We've got to shift it to significantly improve it. We have a 5-year programme of which we are in year 1.5. So, for example, we will have the first stroke medicine consultant shortly, but that actually, the recruitment process for that ends tomorrow. That'll be one of the benefits we'll start seeing out of it, but we have a long way to go. And if we don't do anything, the costs of healthcare in this island will significantly increase with the ageing population. So that gives you a high level of principles.
We still don't know so much about the Jersey care model. That's probably the biggest issue, and that's one of the reasons why I think people have been so quick because we want to understand it and we don't understand it, and that's a big issue. It needs to be holistic. We need to know that all elements of care in this society are involved in the discussion about the Jersey care model, from GPs through to consultants in the hospital, through dentists, through voluntary organisations. They all need to be involved and properly consulted with as to what's happening here. My big fear about the Jersey care model is that we're taking on a model that will not withstand an economic downturn in this island. I fear that we will have a care system which is so amazing if you can afford it, but that there will be at some point in 20 years' time, let's say, a downturn which means we can no longer afford it. So it needs to be stress tested against the worst that could possibly happen in Jersey to make sure that we can continue to afford it. But more than anything, we all need to be told a lot more about it. Thank you.
The care model is one of those generational changes, generational projects I talked about earlier, and it makes a lot of sense. Basically, it's to have care that is less hospital-centered, not to send you to the hospital every time you need a Band-Aid, and more community-based. How you do it, again, the devil is in the details. We have one plan. We've asked consultants to give us one plan, but what will happen is that in the next 4 or 5 years, we will revise that to make it match reality.
I also agree that I think the care model looks good on paper, and I think many of the medical profession support it on paper, but there isn't enough staff and there isn't enough funding. In my last role, I did have clients who needed care, and it was quite clear that there just isn't enough care out there already. If your model is to put someone in their own home and care for them, there must be care there. And you have people who have carers who are meant to come in, get them up and dressed and breakfasted, who are not turning up till 11:30 in the morning. It's difficult to get care. It takes a long time to get care packages sorted out. There's a shortage of carers, there's a shortage of funding, and it also means that someone is entirely reliant. If they don't have family, they are relying on that carer. The carer is not only the carer, it's their friend, it's their social life. And when the carer moves on, they've lost their social contact and they're having to start again with a stranger. There's a lot of turnover in care. So I do have concerns about it, and I think it really needs investment, it really needs funding and a lot of thought.
If the 3 states members here could admit that they don't know much about the Jersey care model, heavens help us. The hospital has been designed around a working Jersey care model. The Jersey care model doesn't exist. And the problem with it is that it is now being hived off onto the charity sector. Now, this means that the states are hiving off onto a private sector, which they themselves should be doing. I have been to 3 of the Jersey care model so-called information evenings. We were not allowed to ask questions. They don't know where the money is coming from. They don't know where the organisation is coming from. It is top-heavy with organisers and not enough people who are going to work this sector. And nobody knows about it, so heaven help all of us.
I think that brings question time to an end. In concluding, I would like to thank the candidates. I would like to thank you, the voters, for coming along. I'd like to thank the honorary and, of course, my efficient timekeeper. Thank you very much.